Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Adapt, Enrich, Remediate, Accelerate, using personalized learning in your literacy system. My name is Victoria, and I work on the literacy team here at Amplify. Today's webinar will be recorded, and we're going to email out the recording link for you to rewatch as you'd like. And everyone here with us today will also receive our certificate of attendance. We have a live captioner with us. So if you want to access those captions, please click on the live transcript in the bottom tray. Throughout this webinar, if you have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A and we'll try to get to them at the end. We welcome comments and commentary in the chat. And to start, let's find out where everyone is joining us from today and what you love most about personalized learning. And I'm going to give everyone a couple of minutes to join and you can do that. Just a quick note too, as we have people join, we have a lot more webinars scheduled for the series. The science reading is for everyone. So if you haven't already signed up for more, please do. Still to come are conversations about the science of reading and intervention, biliteracy, and using your stimulus funds. To find out about the other webinars in this series and to watch recordings of past webinars, visit amplify.com/SOR everyone fall 2022, and we'll talk a little bit more about those upcoming webinars later. So thank you again for joining us here today. We are so excited to welcome Melissa Ulan, who is our Senior Vice President of Supplementals here at Amplify, to talk about personalized learning, how it connects to science of reading, and the essential role it plays in MTSS. Hi, Melissa. How are you doing today?
Hi, Victoria. Thank you so much for having me today. It's so fun seeing where everyone is from, and I love seeing in the chat all the things that explain why you love personalized learning. I'm pumped to talk about this with you today and how personalized learning connects with MTSS and the science of reading. So let's dive in together. We have 3 goals for today. First, let's understand what is personalized learning in the first place. We're going to talk about some different models of personalized learning and think about how do they apply to your classrooms. Then we're going to explore how personalized learning is part of MTSS. You may have joined some of our earlier webinars, which Victoria had mentioned, where we talked about MTSS, but if you haven't, don't worry. I'm going to review the MTSS framework and we'll connect it to personalized learning. And then our last goal is about the science of reading and personalized learning specifically. Let's see this really come to life by experiencing the science of reading practices across the system and specifically with personalized learning. All right, a little bit of fun. So before we dive in, I thought we'd do something a little bit different. At Amplify, we have a personalized learning program for reading skills called Amplify Reading. Something called a Curioso is part of this program. You can think of it as like a curious companion that grows up with our students on their journeys to become strong, confident readers. I love taking this quiz to see which Curioso I am, so I thought I'd share it with you all to start. So we popped a link in the chat. Feel free to take it and share with us what Curioso you are. My Curioso, or I like to think my curiosity, turns out from the quiz, it likes jokes and it doesn't take anything too seriously, which I think is quite fitting for me. It also has butterfly wings, octopus tentacles, and really thick black glasses with a couple sparkles. So if that doesn't get you compelled to try it, I'm not sure what other pitch I have. All right, so before we dig into personalized learning, I wanted to set a little bit of context. The latest middle of school year data shows that American students have made great progress in recovering from the school disruptions caused by COVID-19. But in every elementary grade, we're still seeing that there are more students at risk of not learning to read than they were 2 years ago. And that's before the pandemic disruptions began. Now, there's good news and there's bad news. Let's start with the good news. Throughout the spring and fall of 2021, as more elementary students returned to the classroom, schools across the country made meaningful progress in reducing the percentage of students at risk for not learning to read. These instructional successes are especially evident in the upper elementary grades, like think grades 3 through 5. And so thank you to all of you for the enormous role you keep playing in supporting our students and accelerating their growth. The bad news is that across all grades, the percentages of students at risk and at greatest risk are still worse than they were at the middle of the 2019-2020 school year, and that's before pandemic disruptions began. So pandemic related learning losses in early literacy are now disproportionately concentrated in the early elementary grades. And even when we didn't have like this situation and we actually had all of our instructional days, we still consistently see troubling data. About 2/3 of fourth graders are not reading proficiently, and this has been consistent for the past 20 years. So something is not quite and hasn't been working for a while. And so today there's lots of things we're going to do together to address these challenges, but the solution I offer up to you today is personalized learning, and talking and thinking about personalized learning as an integral part of MTSS. Now, I know that personalized learning can kind of sound like a buzzword. And so I wanted to spend some time together unpacking this term and exploring what it means together. On my screen, I have a definition from Student Achievement Partners, and I just love it. Personalized learning in literacy education is an approach in which teaching and other learning experiences build on each student's strengths, address each student's needs, spur student motivation and agency, and help all students meet grade level standards and ultimately achieve college and career readiness. Personalized learning is about meeting students where they are, tailoring instruction and supports to help them achieve reading proficiency. And one thing I really want us to focus on using this definition is that you personalize learning every day. You do incredible things in your classrooms and with your students to tailor the instruction and supports you are providing to meet the needs of your students. Thank you. Some of you may be familiar or very familiar with digital solutions that also personalize learning, and we're going to talk about that today too. I thought it might be fun to do a little bit of sharing around personalized learning and differentiation. So we'd love to hear from you. What are some of the ways that you currently differentiate instruction in your classroom? Feel free to pop that in the chat too. We'd love to see what you all are up to. I thought that as a group, we'd build some models together about personalized learning to grow our shared understanding before we dive more deeply into MTSS and science of reading connections. Amplify CEO Larry Berger has come up with what I think is a really wonderful way to think about some of these models, and he kindly allowed me to borrow some of his thinking and illustrations, which I wanted to share and talk through with all of you. I think one of the most familiar models we might have in our minds as we think about personalized learning is the tutoring scenario, where a person spends time one on one with a learner and in that format, focusing on specific skills. There's lots of great research that attests to the powerful effects of the tutoring model, and the effect sizes in those studies are quite large. And I know you all have seen the benefits that your students experience when you spend time with them one on one, tailoring your instruction and supports to provide exactly like what that student needs in that moment. There are other models too, and I am so impressed with the educators that I see executing these types of practices in their classrooms. And so let's take a look at a few more, some of which may be as familiar as the tutoring model, but maybe there's some new things here. So the first one I thought we'd take a look at, I think of as low floors, high ceilings. It's an approach where we give students who might be struggling lots of points of access while also creating lots of room to grow for kids who are more proficient. So let's imagine our classroom. Welcome to our classroom, or my classroom for today. We live on a napkin, and you'll see lots of cute ones as we go through these. That wasn't the only one in the tutoring realm. We have our students on the left, and what we have here is the same goal represented by that star for all of our students. And that goal is a certain distance away. And in our class, we might have one student who goes about solving that in one way and gets there just fine. And then we have another student in the middle here who's maybe struggling a little bit. And we might also have another student who just hasn't made any progress at all. In a low floors, high ceiling classroom, the teacher will take that green student that you see at the top after completing the initial task independently and then provide a higher ceiling to that problem. Maybe that looks like taking some of the tools away, or maybe it's asking the question differently. And as a teacher in this model, I continue to provide these types of higher ceilings to the students in my class. And I do this until everyone has reached that learning goal. So in the low floors, high ceiling model, the teacher is the one who's choosing the personalization. What's being personalized is that path and difficulty to reach that shared goal. And the format in which it is done is for the whole class in a shared community experience. Next, I thought we might take a look at what I might call the scaffolding model. So in a scaffolding model, we can imagine we have 3 students again, but here they each come with different access to the day's activities. Teachers are going to put in place the right scaffolds that enable all of their students to access those activities. Sometimes that might be support in real time to help students access that material. It also could be something that you teach in advance of a lesson. Phil Darrow, I admire Phil in many ways. One of the things he's famously said is that students may be 2 years behind in math, but only 5 to 10 minutes behind on today's lesson. And I think that idea is really relevant as we think about literacy too. Teachers provide that type of warm up built into a task that helps give students access to the day's activities. So in the scaffolding model, again, here we have the teacher who is choosing the personalization. What is being personalized are those supports that we're providing to students, and it's done for the whole class. All right, our next model, the yoga model. And yes, we are literally going to imagine that we are all in yoga together. In the yoga model, all students do the same task in a shared class experience, but the feedback that each student receives is different depending upon the level and the type of work that they do. In yoga class, everyone is doing the same poses, or at least working towards doing the same poses if you're me, but some are refining tiny details while others are, just trying to get into the pose at all. And the teacher is giving different feedback to each student, but the activity is the same for all. So in our yoga example, my yoga teacher would say, Melissa, you can do this and don't forget to breathe. But, for others, the feedback might be more of an adjustment to get deeper into the pose. Like, I don't know, align your hands with your heart and look up. I would topple over. But other people, that feedback is where they're at. And in this type of model, it's the feedback that is changing. And this is so much of what teachers do every day to personalize learning in their classrooms. Different kids need a push sometimes and encouragement other times. All right, so in the yoga model, let's think of it in the classroom structure and stop imagining me falling over in every yoga pose, which is the reality. It's the teacher doing the personalization. It's the feedback that's being personalized and not the task. And again, it's the whole class learning together. Okay, so the last model I want to touch on is more of an engineering model. And this is where software or really a digital solution can support teachers in the personalized learning they are doing in their classroom. In a class, we have students who are at different places with their learning, right? They have strengths in some skills, gaps in others. There's different learning styles, different motivations. And what a digital program can do is figure out the right activity for the right student at the right time. Another thing a digital program can do is support students making different rates of progress through the material. And another thing that's really powerful about a digital program is the way it can help you, the way it can support teachers in doing things with their students, like grouping their students in different ways, leveraging recommendations, instructional supports, and data and insights from the program, from what it is providing. So, in the engineering model, the program, the digital side is what's choosing the personalization. The tasks are delivered to the students and those are personalized. And each individual student has their own access to this program. And all of this gives teachers powerful insights and data to further enhance all of the other amazing ways they are differentiating and personalizing instruction, just like we talked about with the other models. I like to think about personalized learning in this engineering type context as like the digital tutor that you want in your classroom that is there to help you to extend your instruction in powerful ways by providing students with that like additional differentiated instruction and tailored pathways or routes through the material to do it in a way that you would want it and to do it in a way that is efficient and saves you time. For me, if I were to think about what a digital tutor should do, like it should really provide students with different instruction and pathways when they're struggling. Um, it should also offer precursor and ancillary skill development and advancement opportunities to aid tackling, that challenging content, but also enable them to accelerate. We want students to be able to accelerate when they're ready while still getting support in places that they need it. And that can happen along different skills depending upon the individual student and their needs. It would also alert teachers with targeted resources to support students, all while keeping them moving. Now, before we leave this engineering model, there's another word that I think often gets talked about in the realm of personalized learning. And I wanted to make sure we kind of dug in and defined it too. And that word is adaptive or adaptivity. In an adaptive model, you can think of that as part of a digital program, part of the way to provide personalized learning. Students progress along a unique pathway through a learning map of a particular domain. And as a student progresses, what should happen when something is adaptive is that their pathway is adjusting and it's adjusting across multiple dimensions. So it's not like you're following a tunnel, it's like you're moving in different directions. Adaptive programs are going to continually analyze student performance data to determine what skills should be focused on and when, and then use that data, use that insight that it's able to gather to alter the pathway of the student. Now, I wanted to contrast this with a linear model. In a linear model, there's going to be a set progression of skills that every student is going to go through within or across skill domains. So, in these scenarios, you'll find that a student must complete one skill before they're able to move to another. So, the progression itself, what that that movement path isn't based on student performance, but that progression, that pathway is the same for everyone. Okay, so those are the models for personalized learning that we're going to touch on today. Now, these are not exhaustive. There are many other ways to personalize learning too. But given the time we have together, these are the ones that I wanted to highlight. I'm so curious and would love to hear from you. Which of these models have you used in your classroom? Tell us in the chat. Let us know. We're super curious. And also, if there's a model that you think of that maybe would benefit from sharing with our community here, feel free to add that too. I hope these models and these adorable illustrations, at least I find them very charming. Thank you again, Larry. Help paint the picture of some of the personalized learning in practice, and also connect with you about the amazing personalization and differentiation you are doing every day. So before we dive into MTSS, I wanted to just spend a moment on the research, because research is so important and it's a critical theme in all the work we're doing through our webinar series and the conversations we have about evidence-based practices. We know from research that personalized learning works, that it makes a difference, and thus it's an important part of our system. A meta-analysis found that formative assessment conducted by either a teacher or software program has significant and positive impacts on student literacy outcomes. Moreover, research on software-based tutoring systems has found that these systems can be as effective as human tutors because of the personalized practice, including scaffolding and feedback that they provide. Now, I wish everyone was able to spend so many hours with humans to get that one-on-one support. And I am also energized by this research, knowing that we can extend our amazing teachers through solutions and some of the models we talked about today. So let's dig into MTSS. If you joined our earlier webinar, Building a Science of Reading Ecosystem, Demystifying the Science of Reading and MTSS with Susan, you heard her talk all about MTSS. But I know there might be some of you who weren't here for that session. That's totally okay. Let's spend some time refreshing ourselves on the framework and what it means. MTSS is a multi-tiered system of support. And I want to hone in on that word system because it's important. That means we are taking a holistic view that includes the whole district, whole schools, whole grade levels, whole classrooms, sometimes individual students, but I think as Susan said, it's not just individual students. It's really about the programs that we're putting in place around our students to help them achieve reading proficiency. MTSS integrates data and instruction to maximize student achievement and support students from a strength-based perspective. Now, there are 4 essential components, and those are reflected on my screen. We have screening, progress monitoring, a multi-level prevention system, and data-based decision-making. And in this system, the principles and procedures, they need to work together and use the best evidence of how students learn to read. And it needs to do this at every level of the education system. The district level has to have like a system in place where you're working with the schools and the schools are working with teachers and classrooms, and all of those things, they need to be in alignment. This framework is proactive and preventative, and this part's really important. We're trying to ensure that students are getting the right instruction before they encounter challenges in their learning trajectory. Data-based decision-making is a central tenet. It's literally in the center of the framework. And MTSS offers educators a framework to engage in data-based decision making related to program improvement. So through data, there's two outcomes that you can focus on, and these are proficiency and progress. First, let's take proficiency. You want to ask, are at least 80% of students not at risk? And then progress. Are we keeping at least 95% of those students not at risk and out of risk? When you can answer both of those questions with yes, then our system is working. But if we're not able to answer yes to those two questions, then we need to evaluate what we're doing and determine ways to make improvements. This is a graphic that we use at Amplify to talk about the ecosystem. You want to have the tools, the resources, the processes in place in your districts and your schools and your classrooms. You want to make sure that you have really strong core instruction that's at the top of our picture. And then to complement that, that's where this differentiated instruction and practice comes in. It's an extension of your core, and it should intentionally support your core. We also have intervention. When you need to have intervention outside of that core instructional block that you have, you also want it to be an extension of your core, and it's designed to help students learn the things that maybe they didn't in core. And then again, coming back to data, we want to tie it all together with a cycle of data. In order to have this type of data, you need an assessment to capture it and understand it. And what is so important about this data is that you can use it to determine what's next in your core instruction, in your differentiated instruction and practice, or your intervention. So all of these things, your core, your differentiated instruction, your intervention, your assessment data, they all need to work together for the same goal of helping students learn to read. And they should all support students' development through the science of reading. So we've been talking about all the ways we personalize learning, the ways we differentiate instruction to meet the unique needs of our students. Within MTSS, personalized learning is a key component of that multi-level prevention framework. So we talked about how MTSS is proactive, it's preventative. We want to have the right programs in place to hit those numbers, right? 80% of our students are proficient and 95% of those students stay out of risk. So I think it's critical that we have programs in our system that support all students. Personalized learning designed to support all students in your classroom then becomes an essential component of the system to achieve those key outcomes. We know that every student in your classroom is unique. They come to your classrooms with different strengths and different opportunities for growth. With MTSS, I think we want to celebrate and leverage students' strengths and help support students through their gaps. And this, to me, is really what personalized learning affords. A personalized learning program should be that extension of your best practices, helping you ensure that you keep students out of risk, staying proficient. It should allow you to strengthen that core instruction that you're providing through the additional instruction and practice with grade level materials. We want it to use precise data that it's like pulling from within the program as students are doing activities, so it can partner with you to be proactive with your students. It should identify where students may have gaps and address them, while also finding areas of strength to then accelerate when students are ready. In addition to the specific data driving what happens for individual students from that assessment layer we were talking about, I think personalized learning programs can give you another view into how your system is doing. Personalized learning is an important component of MTSS because of this too, because of the data it can provide. We want to make the best database decisions we can so that we can strengthen our system, so that we can strengthen student outcomes. And through regular engagement with a personalized learning program, I think that gives you all just more data at your fingertips to see how the system is working. Now, something that is challenging is finding the time to do everything, but I also think that the flexibility a personalized program affords is really beneficial in achieving your goals. With a personalized program, we can find ways to give that additional practice on what students learn during core instruction that we really want. You can use them in a whole variety of situations. You can use them during small group time or center time. Some teachers give students choice time. You might have a computer time in your schedule. Maybe a great scenario is if your students love their personalized learning program so much, they beg you to use it at home. There's also after school, summer break, and more. I noticed some people mentioned in the chat that you use an engineering model, and that's kind of what I'm talking about here. So I wonder, for those of you who've used a personalized learning program before, when have you used it? Share with us in the chat. I think it's always really nice to hear how other people are implementing these so we can learn from each other and find maybe some new ideas for ourselves. Okay, so let's connect to the science of reading. Now, we've been talking about MTSS and the process, and the science of reading sits right inside of it. The science of reading is an evidence-based approach to reading instruction, and that is what we want to use, inclusive of the systems and supports, the monitoring, and the resources that we put in place in order to achieve the outcomes of MTSS. Many of you are familiar with what's on my screen. This is the simple view of reading, kind of a key science of reading framework, which helps us understand that skilled reading is a product of really two things. First, we have language comprehension, and second, word recognition. You can't have just one or the other, you really need both. All of the programs that are part of your system should be grounded in the science of reading, and a science of reading personalized learning program can extend your reach in getting all students to be skilled readers. Through personalization, a program can ensure that students are getting both that language comprehension and word recognition skill instruction and practice that they need, but also when they need it and in the level of skill that they need it in. So I thought we could take a look at an example and together trace it through the different components to bring it to life. So let's take word recognition. With word recognition, we need to pay attention to sounds and the letters that represent those sounds and how those letters work in words. We know from research that taking a multisensory approach, so like showing the positions of the lips and the teeth and the tongue for each sound, aids students in their understanding and their articulation of the sound itself. So we know one key component of MTSS is our assessment and getting that data. Through something like an observational assessment, teachers can observe how students are making sounds, and that enables them to better assess their needs. And I think this is particularly important with our early readers. Core instructional practices and resources also leverage this research to provide explicit and systemic phonics instruction to all students in class. We have everyone in that core block. Now, using data from that assessment, for example, and in alignment with those evidence-based science of reading practices being taught during core instruction, personalized learning provides a needed extension, an opportunity to reinforce, to build, and to support. So let's take this same evidence-based approach that we've been talking about and imagine it in a digital personalized learning environment. And you'll see a little image on my screen blinking about this is an example I'm going to reference. We can deploy that same multi-sensory approach digitally, like on my screen. We can let students see those mouth positions for each sound. On my screen, this is a game from a personalized learning program, and it has specifically created animations that show those lip, teeth, and tongue positions for each sound to fine tune students' articulation of the sound. Students first encounter these animations when learning a sound, and then later, students have access to this as a scaffold throughout the game. This also mirrors what you saw on my previous slides, where, for example, in the core instruction, we're also using these articulations, maybe through articulation videos. You saw a little snapshot on my screen of a young girl in an articulation video, and that can be used during core instruction to teach this, whereas this animation is reinforcing it. Another thing a personalized learning program can provide is simultaneously giving students additional scaffolds and techniques that can support them. We also know from research that using a mnemonic can help beginning readers map letter shapes to their sounds. So in this game, there are embedded picture mnemonics in those letters. And actually, those pictures fade over time. So as students become more familiar with the letter, the image is going to fade to the background and fade away. And this is going to happen at different paces for different students. And the adaptivity in the program, that's what is going to enable students to progress in a way that's just right for them. In addition to using these evidence-based science of reading techniques, the approach in the game supports our goals with MTSS. We are providing additional instruction and practice that supports core instruction. It draws on students' strengths and provides scaffolds when needed to help them engage with grade level content. And what I love about this example, in addition to the charming graphics, but that the game is designed in a way that is really motivating for students. It's engaging them in their learning, fostering that investment that I think we all want among our students in doing the important work of learning to read. It's drawing on their strengths and also giving them scaffolds when they need it. Here's another science of reading framework. I think, unfortunately, today we don't have time to look at examples for every part of Scarborough's rope. But what I wanted to share is that we can take the same approach that I just outlined for every one of the strands. And what I find really powerful about personalized learning programs is that they can support the work you do as teachers to really weave those strands together. An adaptive program can know how and when to spiral the skill instruction and practice, moving students towards increased automaticity and overall reading proficiency. So, there's a few things I want to leave you with as you consider the personalized learning component of your system. When you're deciding or evaluating the personalized learning program that is part of your system, and you want to make sure that it's grounded in the science of reading. The first is that there is a research-based approach to critical literacy skill development that complements core science of reading instruction. Today, we took a look at an example of word recognition, and we saw how that same research-based, evidence-based science of reading practice can extend through assessment, core instruction, and personalized learning. That consistency is really important, designing a system that is going to produce those outcomes. And so you want to see that in your personalized learning program. The next thing is a whole child instructional focus. I want to see a program that focuses on an individual student's strengths, so that we can really build their confidence, and accelerate them in areas when they are ready, and also support them with their needs. We want students to have access to targeted skill instruction and practice at just the right level in all of their different skill needs. Another thing to consider and look for would be an adaptive scope and sequence, and not really a leveled one that I think doesn't really respect and celebrate the learner, where the learner might be strong, where they might need more support, and how to just see them as the unique individual that they are and put them on a path that is aligned with kind of that uniqueness. We talked a bit about a digital tutor, and I think that's really important. I think a personalized learning program should be an extension of all those amazing things you're doing in the classroom, and also feeding back to you the information you want and need to continue to make the most of every minute you're spending with your students and honing the time you spend in your core block. And lastly, intrinsic motivation. I think we want to motivate and engage students so that they are truly invested in their learning, that they're willing, they're interested in doing this really important work, but honestly, sometimes hard work, right? Of learning how to read, and a program that taps into students because they see the power that they have as they grow into strong readers, ultimately makes it fun and propels their growth forward. So I wanted to turn things back to Victoria. We have some time to answer some questions if there are any that we didn't get to. And I know we also wanted to share some upcoming webinars.
Yeah, Melissa, we did have a couple of questions are coming up. People are curious about how they can access Amplify Reading. So I wanted, if you wanted to provide some guidance there.
Sure. Amplify Reading is a program that is available to schools and districts, and we'd love to make it available to you. You're able to contact Amplify, and we will connect you with a talented member of our team who can talk to you more about trying the program in your schools and districts.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so I did want to touch on our upcoming webinars that we have in this series that is ongoing through December. So our next session is next week with our wonderful Sarah McCarty, and she's going to talk about how to get at-risk readers back on track with research-based intervention, which is a great extension of what we talked about here with Melissa. Then we're going to actually do another session of Susan Lambert's session on building a science of reading system, demystifying MTSS. And that will be on Monday, November 7th at 3 p.m. Eastern. And then we're going to touch on biliteracy, which we know is really popular right now. I know a lot of educators are trying to support their dual language students. So we're going to do a session on leveraging the science of reading to boost biliteracy. And that will be on Monday, November 14th at 1 p.m. Eastern. Thank you all for joining today. Looks like we have a few questions in the chat. Jennifer asked, do you have research-based literacy block example schedule for different grade levels? We could probably provide that to her in email, right?
Yeah, so something that we do at Amplify is we try to really be a partner to the districts and schools that we serve. So we are delighted to work with you to talk about that. And we also have some implementation resources. They are grounded in Amplify programs, but that do talk about how to do your core instruction and your personalized learning, for example, together in a schedule. So we can share some of those implementation resources.
Great. Nicole was wondering if a parent could subscribe to Amplify Reading.
Oh, Nicole, thank you for asking. I would love to say yes. At this time, we serve really school districts and schools. But if there's anything, materials we can share with you to pass along the information, we'd be happy to do so.
Great. Kimberly was asking, is there a tutorial for accessing Amplify data and reports? And yes, we do have that, that we can shoot over the link to you, Kimberly. All right. I think those are the main questions. Thank you all for joining. Really appreciate your time. And thank you, Melissa, for this wonderful session. We hope you all learned a lot about personalized learning, MTSS, and the science of reading.
Oh, my pleasure. And thank you all for sharing so much with me. It's a pleasure to get to know you and to be part of this community. Thank you so much. I admire you all greatly.